In 2 Samuel, King David issues a simple administrative command to count his military forces. The reaction from heaven is swift and devastating, and divine plague strikes the land. In a matter of days, 70,000 citizens are wiped out, leaving a trail of bodies from Dan to Beersheba. For a modern reader, this reaction is entirely baffling. Taking a census is a routine government function. Counting citizens is how a state organizes its administration and taxes. Yet in this ancient text, a standard head count triggers a mass casualty event. The paradox deepens when you look at the exact sequence of events in chapter 24. The text states that God was angry with the Israelites, incited David to count the people, and then dropped a devastating punishment on the civilian population for the king's order. We are wired to expect individualized justice. If a leader makes a mistake, the leader should pay the price. One person, one punishment.
To understand why a paperwork decision resulted in a massacre, we have to let go of our modern, individualistic worldview and examine a forgotten spiritual law operating beneath the surface of this text. The book of 1 Chronicles tells the exact same story, but adds a crucial detail. It reveals that it was actually Satan who rose up against Israel and provoked David to take the census. This diagram illustrates Israel's spiritual structure: God at the apex, the king in the middle, and the nation at the base. The people harbored hidden sins, creating an underlying rot. This structural vulnerability allows the adversary to bypass the populace and directly strike the king. David's order to count his army served as the explosive, visible symptom of a deep, hidden spiritual infection already running rampant through the nation. This network visualization demonstrates a core biblical concept: communal destiny. In the ancient world, a nation wasn't a loose collection of independent citizens. They were a single, interconnected living organism. A condition in one area rapidly spreads to infect the entire cluster. We see this dynamic early in Israel's history. In Exodus chapter 32, the people collectively demand a golden calf. The entire community then suffers a brutal judgment for that shared idolatry. The reverse is also true. In Joshua chapter 7, a single man named Achan secretly steals forbidden goods. Even though he acted alone in his tent, the entire Israelite army is routed in their next battle as a direct result of his hidden theft. Applying this structural law to David clarifies his failure. He was dragged down by his own people. The widespread spiritual decay of the population seeped upward, clouding and ultimately corrupting his royal judgment. In this context, the census was a tool used to quantify human strength. By focusing on the sheer number of fighting men, the nation shifted its reliance from divine protection to military size. This headcount served as a formal ledger of self-sufficiency, showing a people who now valued their own numbers above their covenant with God. Within this framework of communal identity, the spiritual health of the people dictates the vulnerability of the crown. The deaths of those 70,000 were the tragic consequence of a failure that belonged to the whole community. The moment the final numbers of the census are tallied, David is struck with intense remorse. His conscience finally wakes up. He realizes he has been played by the enemy, and that his ego has led his vulnerable people straight into a devastating trap. Instead of pointing fingers at the nation's underlying sin, David adopts a posture of spiritual covering. He steps between the angry God and the guilty people, absorbing total responsibility for the failure. The seer Gad soon arrives with an impossible ultimatum from God. He confronts David with 3 unavoidable judgments: 3 years of famine, 3 months of fleeing from war, or 3 days of deadly plague. Operating within a communal system means true leadership requires stepping beyond the glory of shared victories. It demands a willingness to voluntarily absorb the crushing weight of the community's collective failures. Faced with 3 agonizing options, David makes a radical choice. He selects the 3 days of plague, deliberately choosing to fall into God's hands rather than the hands of invading human armies. He makes this choice based on his deep understanding of the divine character. Despite the severe judgment hanging over his head, David knows God's defining trait is profound mercy.
This response shows exactly why history remembers David as a man after God's own heart. He earned that title through his radical transparency and immediate, unvarnished repentance the second he faced his own darkness. Most of us have the opposite instinct. When we fail, we hide, delay, and let our mistakes linger in the shadows. But carrying unresolved guilt drains our spiritual strength and actively harms the communities we belong to. The ultimate lesson of the census is that immediate, painful honesty before God is the only way to stop the spread of spiritual darkness and clear the path for the mercy that brings the judgment to an end.